as this happened, the Sunday service was streamed live online as usual. And that video is as gut-wrenching as you can imagine. We want to be as transparent as possible here and tell you that after a lot of conversation, we decided to show you some of it with the goal of giving you a sense of how things played out inside this worship space. We also know that what this video shows will be central to the investigation into why and how this happened. At the top of your screen, near the center, you see a man dressed in black who's been sitting in this service, stand to take the symbolized body and blood of Christ. He returns to his seat briefly before coming back out of the pew to speak to the man who just gave him communion. We are freezing the video here, just before that suspect pulls out a rifle and fires. A church security guard responds, and we see the shooter fall to the ground as a stunned congregation ducks and covers. It all happens in 6 harrowing seconds.
That's how long it took to turn a peaceful Sunday service into a room filled with chaos and fear. Cameras inside this sanctuary capture the moment the gunman pulled a shotgun from his pants, shooting 2 male parishioners in the corner of the church.
Tonight, these shocking images out of Texas. Gunfire interrupting a quiet church service. The church live streaming the service. You can see the shooter sitting in the back of the room wearing a large coat. Watch as he pulls out a gun and aims it at a man nearby. Another man appears to reach for his weapon, but the gunman fires first, shooting him and a second man. The gunshots sparking panic in the pews. Worshippers seen ducking for cover. One man covering his wife with his own body. In just seconds, several parishioners opened fire, hitting the gunman, who managed to fire one last shot before falling to the ground, dying at the scene. People rushing over and pointing their weapons at the suspect on the ground.
The terrifying moments caught on camera as that service was being live streamed. Amid the chaos, some churchgoers quickly jumping into action, pulling out their own weapons. And a warning, this video is disturbing.
It happened in the middle of church service. This live stream showing the gunman approach someone standing at the side. He then pulls out what appears to be a long gun and fires, shooting 2 people. Another churchgoer pulls out his own gun and fires back, taking down the gunman. Terrified parishioners dive for cover, some fleeing the church, others moving toward the downed gunman, their own guns drawn.
A live stream video captured yesterday's shooting at the West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement, Texas. An armed parishioner quickly shot and killed the attacker.
Some people ran to escape the danger while others hid under pews.
The West Freeway Church of Christ live streaming the service as the man seen there at the top stood up from his seat, pulled out a long gun and fired several times. Other church members right there shooting back.
The entire incident playing out on camera. We do want to warn you, some may find this footage disturbing.
It was over in just 6 seconds. A live stream of the services at West Freeway Church of Christ shows a man standing up, pulling out a shotgun and opening fire. Church members screamed and ducked under pews. Several others were armed and returned fire, killing the gunman.
In the video, you see the gunman there wearing a dark hoodie sitting in the back pew. He then gets up, walks to the back, and appears to say something to a deacon, and then pulls out a long gun, aims, and begins to shoot. The attack lasting just 6 seconds.
The terrifying moments were caught on camera. We want to warn you, the video is disturbing. The man on the left was one of several people who pulled guns after the shooter struck. Here's Farah Fazal.
Just as church members were passing the collection plate in a Sunday morning service at West Freeway Church of Christ, a man seen in a far corner in a large coat walks out to talk to someone in the aisle, and then he pulls out a gun and begins shooting. He shoots his first victim, and then the second. Instantly, an armed security guard responded and shot the gunman while church members began screaming and ducking under pews. Several parishioners were armed and within seconds pulled their guns, but the gunman had already killed one churchgoer and critically injured another.
We are about to show you what happened inside. Folks, some of the sounds and images may be discomforting. Those split-second reactions from those members likely saved other lives as well. Cameras inside West Freeway Church of Christ were rolling when a man in the upper portion of the screen pulls a weapon and fires. Those shots killed 2. At least 2 armed security church members pulled their weapons, one of them shooting and killing that gunman. From the church's camera, you can see the armed church security members who quickly stopped the threat.
It cannot be overstated how important it is that everyone recognize what took place here today.
The moment this man walked into West Freeway Church of Christ, Isabella Rolla was watching him closely.
I see him sit on the pew behind us, and, you know, something was just telling me something's not right.
She pointed out the man's appearance to her husband.
Told him, I said, I don't feel comfortable. I feel like he's like dressed in like beard and that's a wig. It looks so fake.
As communion came to a close, she noticed the man walk up to a server, say something, then sit back down. Then moments later, he approached the server again.
I saw him pull the gun out, well, the shotgun, and at that point I was like, you know, just panicked, and then we heard it go off, and so we're just screaming, you know, trying to get under the pews.
As some church members grabbed their guns, a security guard shot and killed the suspect.
If it wasn't for him, he could have probably killed more people.
The shooter was sitting next to my mother, and so she is the one that recognized that he had a fake beard on and fake sunglasses on.
It looks so fake.
Chris Wallace describing the horror when a gunman shot his grandfather, Tony Wallace.
He said, "Drop it." And then all he did was pull out a gun and started shooting, and then they all surrounded him with guns, and then they shot him, and I heard like 3 shots.
It is a scene no child should ever bear witness. Tragedy shattering a peaceful Sunday morning service.
It's kind of like heartbreaking, but sometimes you gotta be strong about it and just keep on going.
His papa, one of 2 parishioners killed this weekend.
It took less than 6 seconds to shatter the peace at West Freeway Church of Christ. You see him exchange words with someone, then pull out a shotgun and fire twice. Just seconds later, he is fatally shot by armed members of the church's volunteer security team. Jack Wilson trains that team here at his home gun range.
I don't feel like I killed a human, I killed an evil.
Including 71-year-old Jack Wilson, a reserve deputy sheriff.
We noticed that his right hand was visible, but his left hand never was visible.
Wilson, who was a former law enforcement officer, also trained the church's volunteer security team.
The church in the town of White Settlement, Texas, has a voluntary security team.
The gunman was killed by a parishioner who's part of a volunteer security team. Several more members drew their guns as well. Wilson, a firearms instructor and head of the church's volunteer security, fired 1 shot.
The FBI is working with local and state law enforcement. Right now, they are not releasing the name of the suspect, and they are still working on the motive. But we do know that he has ties to this community, and he has a criminal past.
No one, not the victims or the shooter's identity at this point, has been released.
Police say 43-year-old Keith Thomas Kinnunen walked into the sanctuary and sat among the congregation.
Back in Texas, authorities identifying 43-year-old Keith Thomas Kinnunen as the shooter. They say he has had run-ins with law enforcement in the past, but they have not figured out a motive for this attack.
The shooter has had multiple contacts with law enforcement in the past, but he was not on any kind of a watch list.
Kinnunen's arrest record spans from Tarrant County to Oklahoma, New Jersey, and Arizona. Charges include aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, arson, theft, and possession of an illegal weapon. In 2012, court records show his ex-wife filed a protective order against him in Oklahoma. A year later, an Oklahoma court found Kinnunen mentally incompetent to stand trial and ordered him to be committed for treatment for a short time.
Authorities have identified a gunman who opened fire at a Texas church over the weekend. Keith Thomas Kinnunen fatally shot 2 people inside the West Freeway Church of Christ. It happened in the city of White Settlement, Texas. The 43-year-old was killed by a volunteer security guard at the scene.
The 43-year-old suspect, Keith Thomas Kinnunen, had been arrested multiple times since 2009, including weapons charges in Texas and New Jersey.
So as of right now, we were able to confirm through Oklahoma court documents that the gunman had a history of violence and mental health issues. In fact, his ex-wife was granted an emergency protective order back in 2012 as they were getting a divorce. And so clearly these issues, along with his criminal past, which we also know he had some gun charges out of Texas and New Jersey as well, those are things right now that investigators are taking a very close look at, because that is going to lead to hopefully more information about how he was able to get a hold of a gun.
That suspect is dead, but his mental and emotional stability is part of this ongoing state and federal investigation. FBI involved in this as well. Part of this investigation as to why this man targeted this church specifically. Authorities in River Oaks and in Fort Worth confirm prior arrest for Keith Kinnunen. The 43-year-old killed Sunday after he killed 2 church members here had faced numerous arrests and jail time. He was once accused of misdemeanor deadly conduct back in 2008.
In the meantime, the investigation into a possible motive is just getting underway.
Multiple law enforcement agencies are now assisting the investigation as police work to figure out a motive for the deadly attack.
No motive has been given so far.
And tonight, the hunt for a motive to a violent attack where worshipers should feel most safe.
The FBI is still working to identify the gunman's motive.
The shooter was in the area today, clearly has been in the area. From what we can gather in the investigation, he's relatively transient but has roots to this area.
Preliminary reports said that he entered the church and sat down with parishioners. He got up from that position, pulled out a shotgun, and fired it at a parishioner.
No one, not the victims or the shooter's identity at this point, has been released.
CBS News has learned the 2 parishioners killed were identified as Richard White and Tony Wallace.
Church members identified the 2 men who were killed as Richard White and Tony Wallace.